Please welcome Zaria Forman, climate artist, Helena Gualinga, Quechua human rights and environmental Ecuadorian Amazon defender, and moderator Alexander Dale, Director of Global Challenges, MIT Solve.
Hello, everyone. Before we get started, just a really quick work as we shift towards climate for these next two panels and then the whole next session. Solve's climate work sits in the typical climate tech space sometimes. We've done a big accelerator this summer with Amazon on decarbonizing their devices. You might see some of them in the room. We've also found a really key role in the really messier parts of climate, the agriculture, the housing, restoring and protecting nature. And we've found innovators using tech to do that work, but I'm joined on stage now with two people who are using art and advocacy to solve those same complex problems. So I want to ask each of them to take us to the places that they come from and care about and are trying to support. Zaria, I'm going to come to you first.
Sure.
Tell us about being at the poles.
Okay, so I'm going to try to drop you into Antarctica, down at the bottom of the Earth. And one of the things I wanted to focus on is the sound, because it's something that I never expected. And I feel like if you've never been there, it's not something you really think about, that like ice has a sound, but it does. And when you're like on a kayak or on a boat, just like on glassy water, it's so, first of all, it's like very quiet. It's so far from civilization. So you feel like, it feels otherworldly, but it's so of this earth, like it is this world. And the ice has these tiny little bubbles that have been trapped inside from the glaciers from like sometimes millions of years, that they use these ice bubbles to understand, what our climate was like many millions of years ago. And they're popping open as the ice melts. And so scientists call it ice krispies. It sounds like this like beautiful like pop crackle. It's really soothing and calm and beautiful.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about, what we're seeing on the screen?
Okay, so that's a glacier in Patagonia. It's one of the largest, or it is the largest glacier in Patagonia. And I took the photo with like a long lens, so I was, you can't get very close to a glacier because especially this one is very productive. There's big chunks falling off of it all the time that are kind of dangerous to be too close to. That's a glacier in Greenland. I had this incredible opportunity to fly with NASA for some of their missions about 1,500 feet over a glacier. So you're seeing these huge seracs. They're like 200 feet tall. Yeah.
Fantastic. Helena, very different space. You are based in the Amazon. Take us to your community in the Amazon.
When I'm home, next to it, there's a little creek. And so every morning I wake up and I walk to the creek and I take a bath in this river it's something I've done my entire life. And again, similarly, when in the morning, it's kind of like the forest is waking up. So you hear all these birds that start to waking up and you can hear like the sound of the river, and you feel kind of like the mist and the humidity of the forest on you. And then kind of the sun starts to rise, and it's peaceful. It's so incredibly peaceful in the morning. And it's like so far away from everything, but it's so alive, and you can feel that there's like so much life there. That's my home.
That's fantastic. It's such a space from where we are today. So in defense of that place and that piece, you've led coalitions against fossil fuel extraction, again, for indigenous land rights, and spanning these kind of local communities up to these international groups. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how we're in a tech space, how tech advances this work, or how it can genuinely help with some of these spaces?
Yeah, we've been able to do a lot of storytelling and campaigning and using these tools to not only show the beauty of this and kind of tell our story and take ownership of our own narratives, but also to expose oil companies and what they're doing in the Amazon, mining companies, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also use technology to detect deforestation and to, be able to act rapidly if something is happening. There's all these tools out there that kind of have helped us be more efficient in that kind of work, which has been incredibly, incredibly important. And I think as we speak about the role that technology plays in that, there is, as to everything, and I'm sure it will be spoken about a lot here today, which is there's always going to be a positive side and then a negative side. I think the most important thing right now is, sure, we use the technology for good, and we can make sure that we connect with the world, and people can see what's going on, and we can do something about it collectively. And at the same time, there's responsibility to protect the free world. And protecting the free world also means protecting indigenous peoples and the forest and so forth. We cannot continue to do our work if the pressure is too high on us, if we are struggling to stay alive for the work that we do. And unfortunately, that is an incredible problem in across the world, but in South America, indigenous land defenders are persecuted, that indigenous leaders are constantly being persecuted, legally, physically targeted attacks. And most recently, we're seeing how kind of defamation campaigns target indigenous leaders and land defenders. And it's one of kind of these ways where technology is really, harming people.
Yeah. No, I think that flip side of technology is so critical, and great to draw those connections to those places. I'm sorry, I want to flip that a little bit, because you've been an artist joining scientific expeditions across the ice. You mentioned being in the plane 1,500 feet above these glaciers. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the perspective that role in those scientific expeditions gives you, and what you can bring back from those?
Yeah, it was, that opportunity with NASA was probably the most incredible one that I've ever done. And I think it's obviously important to rely on those types of specialists to make really rational, data-driven arguments for why we need to protect our ecosystems. But, and I was also like, why am I being invited to fly with NASA? Why me, But the reason is, they'd been doing this work for 10 years before I joined them. And, we're still not moving fast enough to fully, on a global scale, do what we need to do to turn the ship around. And I recognized, and this was something I was already doing with my work, that art comes at it from a different angle. So I'm trying to take a different approach. It's more elemental. It's more emotional and from the heart, right? So psychology has proven that human beings take action and make decisions based on our emotions more than anything else. And so art has this really special ability to tap into our emotions. That's also scientifically proven. So when I make these drawings, I'm trying to create, they're really big, so I'm trying to create these immense images that are just overflowing with every single detail I can possibly put into these compositions to transport viewers, to make you feel like you can have that experience that I've had. These places are really, far away from most of our everyday lives, the places that I draw, at least, at the forefront of climate change. And so I'm trying to offer viewers a chance to experience them in the way that I have and fall in love with them in the way that I have. That's why I show the beauty instead of the devastation. I want you to spur action. I want you to be inspired. I don't want you to be paralyzed with fear. And I'm also just a positive person, so I want to move from that space of love. And when you love something, you want to protect it, right? So I'm trying to inspire people to want to make change in that way. And also, I guess to get back to your question, the experience, for example, flying with these NASA scientists, I had so many hours in the air. We would fly for 12 hours, just getting to chat with them while they were, while their instruments were doing their things. And it was really fascinating I'd been doing this work for a long time before, but seeing this landscape from a totally different perspective, literally, just like above, and getting to talk to them about the changes that they'd seen over the years with their own eyes and also their data, and just like learning about what was actually going on from a scientific standpoint and getting to imbue that knowledge into my compositions and try to make it, turn it into a more accessible medium, one that we can digest on an emotional level.
Fantastic. That dual role in those two different spaces. I want to ask about, you sit kind of between some different spaces too. You're part of a newer generation of Indigenous activists. There's a whole bunch of elders. We'll hear from one of them in just a second, or different generation. And I'm curious how you navigate, as someone who is more tech native, these spaces, how you navigate kind of honoring tradition and bringing awareness and finding new ways to innovate on activism.
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, we grow up in this collective setting where we are brought up by a collective. And so, like the vision and the values of the community are instilled to one from the day you're born. And then I think I'm not even sure if this is a generational thing, but I guess my generation, for example, we grew up on kind of the idea of documenting human rights atrocities. We've been trained to document, and we've been trained to an extent where we know what can be used in court and what not, and those were things that my parents weren't necessarily thinking about, but we are, because we saw that there was a huge need for it, and when it was documented correctly, it could be used to protect our communities and our lands. So there's differences like that, where we've grown up in a world where our parents kind of experimented, land defense in times of, modernity and is starting to engage with the globalized world more and more. And where we kind of like inherited their experience, and now we're able to learn and expand more. And then I think we still, I'm here as an Indigenous woman, but I can't claim to represent all my people, or even just my people, if I haven't been designated or delegated that specific role. And so if we grow up in our own Indigenous structures, I think we know how to navigate those spaces and how we represent our people and our communities, while still making sure that we respect our own structures. If that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I really appreciate those balance on both of you. So, because our time is close to running out, I want to close by, we've gone to these different spaces and different ways of acting. For this audience, what's one quick way that they can engage with your work and help these causes move forward?
Well, I'm working on the biggest project of my career so far, trying to make the biggest drawing I've ever made that's 25 feet wide, and I'm working with an organization called Art into Acres, they do a lot of work in the Amazon rainforest, protecting land, indigenous-led projects. And so the sale of this piece is going to hopefully protect millions of acres in the Amazon rainforest forever. And so I'm trying to raise money for that, so you can give me money.
Watch for an art auction, suggest it to your art collecting friends. Great. Helena?
I think engage with us, talk to us directly, skip all the intermediaries. We just talk to us. And, across the Amazon, we're finding partnerships, with people to advance the work that we do. And it's collaborative work. And so, the invitation's open.
Wonderful. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you both for such a great journey on these 12 minutes here.
Thank you so much for having us. Such an honor.